And welcome in everybody to episode number 7 of the Scholastic Sit Down podcast, coming to you for the second consecutive year here. The same pairing as usual between Dylan Ward and myself, Luke Jordan. As you can tell, we coming fresh off the Barn Hockey Bar High School kickoff show for hockey last night. We are recording the day after, Tuesday the 21st. And before we get into everything that we usually do on the pod here, and what's going to be a pretty condensed episode this week, no guest, but yesterday kind of makes up for it. We had a lot of fun in downtown Chicago yesterday.
Yeah, no guess is right, Luke. But yeah, the fanfare was in that kickoff show, and hopefully you all were able to tune into that. It was a lot of fun to co-host that with Luke, and Luke, you did a great job as kind of
Thank
the
you.
main man behind the show, and just a great event in general. That Max Anderson has been a big part of organizing for 3 years now, and also to Spence Montgomery, who we had on our podcast as a guest last week. He's the owner of the barn as well also the bar and he's able to host just a great event, and it was a success as it always was. So it's a great show, and if you like the podcast format, go ahead and watch that. It's still up on YouTube and will be on demand forever. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. A big thanks to Spence Montgomery for hosting us and also equipping us with the headwear we have on today. I told him, hey, let me have one. I'll wear it on the next pod. And he's like, for sure. Dylan asked later on, and then eventually he's like, you guys are killing me, but you better wear it on the pod. So we're making sure it happens for you, Spence. And I'm sure this won't be the last time you'll see it either. But anyway, great food. I've heard great drinks. I can't drink because I'm 20, but I've heard from others. And yeah, definitely go check it out when you get a chance. If you're ever down for a Blackhawks game, get there because I mean, let me just tell you from my first person that the food is very good. But anyways, yeah, go
Luke,
ahead, Dylan.
if you're ever at a St. Ignatius game, go ahead to the
Yeah,
bar, hockey
right?
bar.
That
It's
too.
just a great spot that's been open for what 2 years now since the first show was 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, and yeah, just a great spot. I know I usually try and hit that place up either before or after or both when I go to Blackhawks games. So yeah, just a great atmosphere in there and a great spot to have that kickoff show. And now that that kickoff show is done, we've got official SHL Network broadcasts this week. So let the season begin and the game of the weeks begin.
Yep. And before we get into all that, let's recap some of last week's scores. Going down the line here, we start on Tuesday, October 14th. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, did we happen to cover this one last week or did we not? It was Carmel and St. Ignatius.
We did cover
We
that one
did.
last week.
Okay, so let's
Yep.
hop over to Wednesday. We had two games on Wednesday. Good memory there by Dylan. Glenbrook North hosted Stevenson, and Stevenson actually got out to a hot start. Dylan Oster, Jack Flater ended up having the Pats in front 2-1 after the first, but from then on, three unanswered from first year head coach Jeff Marks and his Spartans as they take this one 4-2 at home, Dylan.
Yeah, much needed win for Glenbrook North here. It's their second win over Stevenson and second win of the season. But for a team that's coming off an SHL championship last year, it hasn't been the hottest of starts for the Spartans. The shots on goal, GBN led 32 to 22 per period. It was just about even as well. And they get the first goal of the game, which I think is huge. It builds some momentum. Stevenson does come and make it a 2-1 lead, but three unanswered by the Spartans, including an empty netter in the third period, secures the victory. And for a team like GBN, yeah, every win is huge, especially for those bottom teams, Luke, because it's a very generous playoff line in the SHL. 8 out of 10 teams make it. So you can kind of have a subpar record and still make the playoffs if you win the games you're supposed to. And GBN did just that.
Jake Semmelhack, one of the players we had on yesterday on the live show for the Players Roundtable, he was the GBN representative. Does that for a reason. He's been quite the offensive player, a goal and an assist in that one. The other Wednesday matchup was one you could not blink by. St. Viator on the road against Loyola, and they come in with power. I mean, let's just look at this goaltending matchup first off. Calder Turpin taking on Charlie Trapp. And sensationally, Calder Turpin stops 29 out of 30, and the big guys deliver. Ryan Loftus, especially with a goal and an assist. A big road win for the Lions as they took this one 3-1 in what's going to be one of the best season series this season.
Yeah, and it's never easy to go play at American Heartland Ice Arena. It's a hostile environment. Loyola always seems to have a student section no matter what kind of year they're having. Now, Luke, I don't know who's keeping track of the shots on goal, but if you look at this, shots on goal in the first period, Loyola 21 to 13, and then
Wow.
in the second period 4 to 1. And then in the third period, St. Viator had the lead 15 to 5. So not sure how accurate those were, but if they are, then that was quite a hectic first period without any goals. And
Yeah,
I
right.
do have a feeling that that's not exactly right. But Pepe LeBoy scores the power play game winner in this one. And St. Viator is alone in points at the top of the SHL table coming into this week.
And going on into Thursday, it was Glenbrook South, a team that's got one of the best points percentages just behind St. Viator in the league, but they've only played 4 games after this week. This was their third. They were on the road against Stevenson, and hilariously enough, I selected this one to be the highest scoring game of the week. Well, nobody's perfect, and to be perfectly honest with you, I kind of just missed reading over that GBS Carmel game that I kind of wanted to pick and Dylan ended up taking, but we'll get to that. The goalie stood out in this one. I mean, Ethan Weiner, who ends up getting the loss, still made 36 saves on 39 shots. Thomas Preston, 22 save shutout. Glenbrook South takes care of business, able to find a power play goal in the first and then 2 insurance goals in the second, winning 3-0 at Twin Rinks, Dylan.
Yeah, Luke, it wasn't just the numbers alone. Both goaltenders were shining in this one as I was able to watch it in person. Ryan Mulvey scores on the power play for GBS in the first period. It ends up being the game-winning goal, the captain of the Titans with his first of the season there, and then they followed it up with a couple goals in the second period. And Glenbrook South, they're a team that had a really hot preseason. They were ranked number one on my hockey rankings for a little bit there, and they came into this game with a 1-1 SHL record, dropping their second game to St. Ignatius 6-3. So they're going to want to get above and stay above 500 as many games as they possibly can.
Yeah, GBS jumping up to 2-1 after that one. And then Glenbrook South took on Carmel 2 days later, the opener on Saturday. The Titans just steamrolled. Carmel tried to put up a fight in the start, but it was 3 unanswered to open up from South. Carmel found a power play goal from Ryan DiNapoli, but then not much else, as from then on, 5 unanswered from GBS, who went on another great stretch. This game was played at Glacier, and man, I mean, just seeing this one in person, it was just kind of a lot of goals, which Dylan's going to end up winning the weekly score, but a lot of
No.
hits too. Very physical game, and not sure what else you have to add on because the score really explains itself. I mean, GBS domination, 9-2 there.
Yeah, Luke, you had the privilege of calling the highest scoring game this week, and it was my pick. But yeah, you were there in person, Luke, and covering for me on the South Hockey Network. But 9-2, this is only the second time in SHL history that GBS has put up 9+ in a game in any year. So the only other time they did that was 10 goals a couple years back. But obviously, just based on the box score, it looks like a hot start. Owen Cosmeter and Blake Hoffer. How about it looks like the Titans got penalties and then immediately scored after on 2 occasions in the first
Yep.
period, one on 4-on-4 and one as a shorthanded goal. And I was able to see that goal by Blake Hoffer in the first period. What a beauty that was. But I mean, look, for the Carmel Catholic Corsairs, it's been an interesting start to the season. You look at, their scores. They're 1-4. They did have the win over Lake Forest, a team that's beaten Nutria twice, but some wide margin losses, 9-0, 10-1, 8-1, and now 9-2. So for Carmel Catholic, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. 8 out of 10 teams make the playoffs. It's more than possible for any team to make it, but you're gonna have to string some wins together if you're Carmel, and that's something they've proven they can do. They can get hot at certain points of the season, but we'll see if that comes sooner rather than later for the Corsairs.
Yeah, don't forget this is a program under PJ Eberhardt who beat New Trier, who was ranked at the top of the state last year at a point of the season, I believe, in the middle. And I mean, it's just yeah, it's been a rough go. I mean, I found a pretty crazy stat. Yes, they beat Lake Forest 6-3, but in losses, they're getting outscored 36-4, which is kind of crazy. It seems once the game gets away from them, it's hard to crawl back in. So if you're able to hang in that first period, and if Carmel's able to do that, I think you have such an increased chance of doing good in that game, and still plenty of ways to learn from your lessons and go down the line from here. But two more games on Saturday. And man, the York Dukes just find a way to get into an entertaining game every single time. They lost to St. Ignatius in one of the games of the season, if not the game of the season. That loss was down in Chicago just a few weeks ago. They have another road game that goes beyond regulation here, a game that they were down 3-1 and ended up bouncing back with two third period goals, the game tying one coming with 135 to go by James Spano on the power play. And then hilariously enough, 58 seconds into overtime, Spano finds his second and York's on the good ending of a sensational game. What a great one it was here, Dylan.
Yeah, James Spano does what Charlie Reef did to York just
Yep.
about a week or two ago, scores the game tire and the game winner. And again, this is another game at American Heartland Ice Arena, a hostile environment to go play as the visiting team. And, we were talking to Evan Polakidis about this. I don't remember if this was part of the show or if this was off camera, but, his team goes into the locker room down by 2 goals and says, look, you've got 17 minutes left. Anything is possible to score 2 goals, push this into overtime. And that's exactly what they did. They scored the first goal of the third period just 46 seconds in. And then it was a 1 goal game, lingered for a while that way before the power play. Game tying goal by James Spano. And for the York Dukes, a team that has proven they can hang on in big games, gets a big win here over Loyola. And they've been on the rough end of losing in overtime a lot this season. As a matter of fact, I believe half of their games so far have been overtime losses, which, don't get me wrong, are valuable in terms of the points that you get. But still, you definitely want to collect two every night that you can. When you get to overtime and you don't come away with 2 points, it feels like a little bit like you got robbed. So for York, just good for them to be on the right side of an OT.
Well, we already had a series finale right after that one. St. Viator and Lake Forest met for the third and final time. This was the deal breaker as Lake Forest won the first one back in September, and then Viator won 3-0 on October 11th. Exactly a week later, they meet again on another Saturday night, this time up north in Lake Forest, in what was just another defensive showing from St. Viator. Two great goalies. I'm shocked there's even 4 goals let in between these two guys. Logan Marsh stops 31 out of 34, and Calder Turpin stopping 22 out of 23. It was 1-1 after two periods, but then 3 goals just over 5 minutes apart from Pepe LeBoy and Nick Koenig ended up being the deal sealers here. St. Viator wins 3-1. Before you break this one down, Dylan, I just want to talk about Calder Turpin. That's his seventh game. He has a goals allowed average of .99, under one, and his save percentage is 952. The only SHL goalie that has a higher save percentage than that is Liam Perreault from St. Ignatius, but he's only played 2 games. So out of qualified goaltenders, quote unquote, Calder Turpin has been the man, and that's the position you worried about most for St. Viator after you lost John Mayer and Brock Hare, who literally wore an A on his jersey last year. Viator, I mean, if they keep playing like this and they just keep having, if they can get 3, 4 goals every game, they can be scary, right?
Yeah, it's always interesting, especially in high school hockey, when you graduate a goalie, then kind of the guy who was the backup that year will end up being the starter the following year. But when you lose 2 goalies at once, that's when it makes it pretty hard. But just St. Viator defensively in general, Luke, they have the second most games played in the SHL so far, and they've got the second best goals allowed at 12, only behind GBS with 10, but look, they've only played 4 games. So on a per game basis, St. Viator defensively is looking outstanding. And you know, clearly this is a pitcher's duel until the third period, 1-1 after 2 periods. And Lake Forest is a team that has been offensively talented to start the year, and that's such a big part of their success early in the early going. But St. Viator does get the last laugh, takes the season series from the Scouts, and That's always big in the SHL because if you take 2 out of 3 in the regular season, you own the tiebreaker in the event of an even record in terms of points at the end of the year. And Lake Forest and St. Viator, I wouldn't put it past them to be tied at the end of the year.
Yeah, and then going into Sunday, Loyola hosting Stevenson. This is another bizarre game to look at. Stevenson opens up with Jack Flater on the power play. Their power play has really started to gain some heat, and they've been a good first period team. I mean, they got outshot 13-9, but it won't sound as bad as the second period. After that first, 1-0 Stevenson. In the second, 4 goals from Loyola, 3 of them on the power play. They end up 3 for 5 on the man advantage in this one. They outshot Stevenson in that second 22-3. Eventual game totals were 54-17. Not even a bad performance at all from Asher Ali, who stops 49 out of 54. But Charlie Trepp, stopping 16 out of 17, earns the win in this one as Loyola prevails after a rough start.
Yeah, Luke, how often can you say a goalie had a great game when allowing 5 goals? You are
Yep.
spot on. 49 saves is incredible. And look, this is a Loyola team who we've seen put up 9 goals already this season. So when you allow 54 shots to only let in 5 is pretty impressive. But Luke, you said it. 4 goals in the second period by Loyola, 4 penalties in the second period by Stevenson. And if it's not for those penalties and power play goals, and if you're talking about even strength goals alone, Loyola wins this game 2-1. So that's a big part of their victory and a big part of, them beating Asher Ali 3 of those 5 times. So Loyola, this is a team that's coming off that overtime loss to York, and they responded in a big way. We're going to be seeing these two teams play each other again on the SHL network later on this season.
And then we had 2 more left to cover on Sunday, Lake Forest and York. And the Dukes just find another way to be in a storybook game, but this time they're the villains per se. They don't end up on the right foot. And they do start on the right foot. They end up after the first period leading 2-0 on goals from Sean O'Leary, Mason Shorter, and then 1 goal in the second from Michael Catalano cut into the deficit, and then with 7:14 left to go in the third, Michael Catalano on the power play found his second. So then we would go to overtime where Jake Maricini would bury things away, and Lake Forest earns the overtime win in what was another sensational game. Logan Marsh gets the win, stopping 32 out of 34. And once again, York, they're not having a bad season at all, especially with these points from overtime starting to really roll in. They're finding their way, Dylan. They're going to climb their way up the standings because tell you what, if you lose in overtime every time you lose, things won't be looking too bad for you. But just another great game this time from Rosemont Ice Arena.
Yeah, listen, 2 overtime losses is a win. If you play over the weekend 2 games, you lose both in overtime. It's like you went 1-1 in terms of the points. So they are definitely valuable. But yeah, just it took a while for us to get overtime in the SHL. A lot of the games early on in the season were decided in regulation, but now feels like we've just been having a ton of these OT games and another great comeback by Lake Forest. And this is the first ever SHL game played at Rosemont Ice Arena as well. So the league really christened the new rink with a great varsity SHL game, and Lake Forest gets back to their winning ways after dropping that one to St. Viator, and looking forward to going back to Rosemont for the SHL playoffs as well.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure we'll see you all there tonight on recording date. 10:40 p.m. The Bowlers in the C division of the men's league take on Just the Tips. That's my team, the Bowlers. We're excited to try to get back above 500, currently 2-2. I'm not kidding, by the way. We actually do play at Rosemont today. So funny enough you say that, but
Let's
yeah,
get
no,
the
Rosemont's
SHL
a
Network broadcast crew out
yeah,
there.
one time, right? It's all I could ask for. We got last names on our jerseys too, so
Okay,
maybe for the
okay.
announcers, probably not for the other teams, but one
We'll
more
see, we'll
game
see
left
if
to
we get any sponsorships to make that one
right?
happen.
That would be great. I mean, somebody let us know. Our games are pretty entertaining. We have won our last 2 games 8-6 and 7-6. So six,
Okay,
seven.
okay.
All right. So then the last game of the day, St. Ignatius and Glenbrook North. GBN hosting, each team only getting 18 shots in this game, but it was the power play that capitalized. In the third period, Dylan Hahn and Max Meyer, two threats on the Ignatius roster, each find their own power play goal. The special teams unit goes 2 for 3 in this one, and they end up prevailing 5-0, the final game of the week, Dylan.
Yeah, and this is a game that was 0-0 after the first, with GBN leading shots 10-3. So you got to wonder what Spence Montgomery and company talked about in the brief timeout between the first and second period, because St. Ignatius ended up completely dominating this one and initiating the running clock at the very end. But a big win for them as they continue to look to cement themselves as a top team in the SHL now in their third season. And they do remain in second place at sole possession too with 12 points, 6-3 record. So as for the Wolfpack, just you know, another great effort on the road, and 3 games over 500 for Spence Montgomery and company, and the highest they've ever finished in the SHL is fourth in their 2 years. So they're looking to continue climbing the ladder.
Well, with that being said, now let's take a look at outside the SHL. Plenty to cover as always. Let's start with last week's game of the week outside of the S. I've just been drilling these bullseye after a flunk in the first one. I think I've picked two, three in a row that have been good, and this one did not disappoint. I said, don't judge Notre Dame's record. Yes, they're under 500, but don't be fooled. And that was quite literally what we saw. Deerfield, who's one loss from being undefeated on the season, ended up trailing 2-0 after this first period. It was all Notre Dame, but then Deerfield answered with two power play goals in the second of their own. No goals in the third period until spot on 60 seconds into overtime. It was a game winner from Sam Cohen, assisted by Eli Jacobs. And in the outside the SHL game of the week, Deerfield prevailed over the Notre Dame Dons by a final of 3-2. Another overtime selection. I've just been locked in on those. As we'll now take a look at the standings around each league. In the North Central, Deerfield 5-0-1, still at the top. They've collected a point in every one of their 6 games so far, and their power play, as I mentioned, has been sensational. A league's best 8 goals. In second, New Trier Blue. In third, Prep. In fourth, BGHW. Fifth, Ice Cats, and so on. Going over to the Chicago Catholic Hockey League, we have the St. Ignatius Wolfpack, who have quite a break in play. They won't resume until November 3rd, but for now they're sitting at the top of the pedestal, 6-0 record. Fenwick not far behind, just 4-1. Brother Rice 2-2 in third. Notre Dame fourth, Providence Catholic fifth. Over to Illinois West. Look who snuck their way back up to the top. The defending state champion Warriors, who graduated a ton of talent, currently 6-3 in 9 games played at the top with 17 points. They do not have the best point percentage, though. Something to look out for is Plainfield, who's played 3 less games, is right on their tail, just 2 points behind in second with 15 points. Maine's in third. Hinsdale Central still off to a great start, 5-0-0 in fourth, and Glenbard in fifth, unbeaten at, or sorry, not unbeaten, 4-0-1. That one slipped by me. Over to the girls division. The defending state champion Trevians have now jumped up top, and the York girls program in their first year is not far behind, 4-1 in second. Glenbrook's in third, Naper Valley in fourth, and Lake Forest in fifth. So that brings me over to my game of the week selection. I have two, but really I have one, if that makes sense. Obviously, you can't look by New Trier Blue and Chicago North because we will actually be bringing that game to you from the All-State Arena on Saturday. That game is believed to be on Marquee. We'll post the updates when we get it. But the real game of the week on top of that, I mean, I saw it last week. They're running it back again this week. And by I mean I saw it online. But Prep and BGHW, I mean, this is a classic rivalry. I know it really well. And in the first matchup, these two teams went to overtime. BGHW took care of business, 3-2 overtime win. Now they meet again, this time at West Meadows. That can pack a lot of people. 8 p.m. on a Friday night. I would expect that place to get pretty rowdy in game number 2 of the season series. So that is my game of the week selection. I'm hoping it's another one that goes into overtime so I can keep the streak going. But that is it for the outside the SHL segment. And here for the week, or sorry, episode 7 schedule, should I say, here on the Scholastic Sit Down. Let's start on Wednesday. The earliest it gets, we got a double header, just 10 minutes apart, really, between York and Glenbrook South. It's the long-awaited home opener for the GBS Titans, who will play this one at the Glenview Community Ice Center. And just right after that puck drops, we move over to Northbrook. So GBN and GBS both hosting. GBN will host against Lake Forest. Those two teams meet for the first time this season. We got 2 games in one day. Dylan, what sticks out to you?
Yeah, you mentioned it. 10-minute separating the puck drop of these two, 10-minute drive separating the two rinks in the Glenbrook area. So for the Titans, yeah, it's their first home game of the season in or out of the SHL. They're taking on the York Dukes, same team they opened the season up against at Addison Ice Arena, and they beat 5-2. Titans were able to sweep the Dukes last year, so they'll be looking to do the same this year, at least take the season series with a win. York looking to even it up and keep some momentum going, especially if it gets to overtime. But for GBN Lake Forest, first meeting of the season, and look, this is a GBN team. We talked about it earlier when we were discussing last week's results. For a team like GBN, in order to get above the playoff line after this start, you need to win the games you're supposed to. And this Lake Forest team, while they have had some pretty big, I don't know if we can keep calling them upset victories coming into the season, this is certainly a team for GBN that you'd like to get at least 2 out of 3 victories over in the regular season. So we'll see what happens in this one, and it should be a great night of hockey on Wednesday.
Yeah, and Lake Forest, it really has become to the point of you can't even call them upsets. You can call the past one upsets because their expectations were, not crazy. Everybody knew they were going to be better, but nobody thought they were going to absolutely leapfrog the standings. I mean, they already have 10 points, as yes, they've played a lot, and yes, they're technically at 500, but they played a really tough start to their season. They have played some ridiculous teams. 2 of their wins are against New Trier. So, I mean, I am really looking forward to the week that they're going to have. They're going to be on the SHL Network Saturday. We'll get later into that one for good reason. I'm excited to see what they'll do this week as they open up against GBN. Going into Thursday, it's just one game. It's the early Twin Ring start at 5:45 p.m. Two teams hungry for their second win of the season. Currently at the bottom of the standings, Carmel and Stevenson, but one team can take a nice jump from this one, Dylan.
Yeah, first meeting in between these two teams, tied at 2 points at the bottom of the standings. If you want to finish eighth or higher, this is, I mean, I hate to use the term must win in October, but these games will count when we come to the end of the season. And
Yep.
it's a point or two separating these teams. It's going to come down to who won the games between the teams that are in the bottom 3, 4 of the SHL table. So both these squads would love to get a victory in their first meeting of the season, and both of them looking for just their second win. So very intrigued to see what happens in this one, and a good opportunity for Carmel after a couple tough blowout losses to maybe, if not win, stay a little bit closer and place some more meaningful time.
Well, we roll on right into Friday. We did not have it last week. We did not have the Friday night at Addison, but this week we do. And it's so important that it's going to be televised on the SHL network. It is the first SHL game of the week. Could not be fired up for two teams who met in the state championship back-to-back years in 2023 and 2024. They met in the state quarterfinal last year. They meet here in SHL play 7:10 p.m. at Addison. Boy, Dylan, I mean, me, you, and Max are going to be on the call for this one. I don't think we could be more fired up to start off the NHL's, or sorry, not the NHL, the SHL season, should I say. Feels like an NHL game. I'm so excited, though.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this one to get back on air. I'm pumped to kind of be at that sideline position, which is one that I really enjoy doing on the SHL network. But again, this is a couple of teams that met in the state championship 2 of the last 3 seasons, and on top of that, they've played already this year in the preseason invitational with New Trier winning 2-1. That game was 0-0 with about 6 minutes left in the third before York opened the scoring and New Trier came back with two unanswered. But so many storylines in this one. The defending state champions, first team to be featured on the SHL network, along with York, which obviously has had the big, change behind the bench and a team that, well, if you want overtime on the SHL Network in game one, York has been involved in a lot of those. So we'll see if we get another here. And just overall, going to be a great game, not only in general, but just a great choice by Max Anderson to open up the SHL Game of the Week schedule.
And what do you know? We actually double dip into Saturday. We will be televising Lake Forest and Glenbrook South less than 24 hours after 5:20 p.m. puck drop at the Glenview Community Ice Center. That's the first of two on Saturday, and the other one kind of a you can't miss as well between St. Ignatius and Loyola. That game 6:10 p.m. at American Heartland Ice Arena. These two teams already met as of 10 days ago when you're seeing this, and Loyola took the first victory 3-1 in what should be a good defensive battle between projected starters and between the pipes, Charlie Trapp for Loyola, Nick Nocera for St. Ignatius. I mean, that's a pretty stacked Saturday for two games, Dylan, to say the least.
Yeah, and I love the fact that we're getting two games of the week here on week number one of the broadcast. And Glenbrook South and Lake Forest, this will be their first time meeting in the regular season. They did meet in the preseason invitational where GBS had a pretty significant victory, but that was before Lake Forest really, got on their horse to start the SHL season. So very curious to see what they do coming into a road atmosphere, and GBS is just second home game of the season. Um, and we'll get to this in a moment, but these two actually are playing a home and home series starting on Saturday, going into Sunday as it shifts over to Lake Forest. But for the other game, Loyola, St. Ignatius, a couple of teams that have a pretty high points percentage. And, you know, again, you said it 10 days ago, looking to see how they respond.
Into Sunday, it's our only three-game slate of the week. We'll go down the line real fast at 5:30. It is Carmel and New Trier, but remember, Carmel did beat New Trier once last year. The Trevians still won the season series. That game's going to be at North Shore Ice Arena once again, 5:30 on Sunday. Just 15 minutes later, as Dylan hinted at, Glenbrook South will head up north to Lake Forest to play that home and home, and then to close out the Sunday night. We close out pretty early compared to usual. Usually a lot later of a game on a Sunday night. If you're in the city for St. Ignatius, they are able to get this one at 6:40 p.m. as they will take on Glenbrook North. What sticks out to you here in the final day of the week?
Well, first of all, interested to see how the second leg of the home and home series goes between Glenbrook South and Lake Forest after what happens on the SHL network. GBN and St. Ignatius meeting up after that 5-0 victory last week for St. Ignatius. Very curious to see how Glenbrook North responds, especially if they can, maybe get a win earlier in the week when they play Carmel Catholic. But speaking of Carmel Catholic, up against New Trier for New Trier Green, this is a team that, it's any given night in the SHL is such a real thing, right? Because how can you trace it back? New Trier lost to Lake Forest. Lake Forest lost to Stevenson. And I don't think you can trace that back to Carmel just yet based on the results we've had. But
Yeah, but in the standings, they're right next to each other. I
yeah,
mean, Carmel has a better record than Stevenson as of right now. So there
yeah,
is kind of a squiggly line you can draw to it, but it's a line.
yeah, yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if New Trier gets trapped in this one, and Carmel Catholic, when it's your turn to play New Trier Green in the SHL, Adam Cheris says it perfectly. The Trevians know that they're getting, you know, their opponent's best game,
Yeah,
perhaps,
usually,
because they know they have to
absolutely.
play up to New Trier Green. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And New Trier is looked a little stoppable so far to start the year. So they've been in some close games and lost a couple. So we'll see what happens. But some great matchups this week, Luke. And I'm going to go ahead and say that my game of the week is going to be New Trier Green and York, the first game of the week on the SHL network. And I think that matchup has a lot of great storylines and just really looking forward to that one. Not the highest scoring, that's just my game of the week.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go on a little bit of a different route here. I really like that matchup between Carmel and Stevenson. It's two teams that are, need a win more than anybody else, if anything, and they each have one win. They haven't met each other yet. That's going to be, as you mentioned before, a big game down the line. So that's going to be my game of the week. Now, when we go to the highest scoring game, it is your turn to pick first. So fire away.
Yeah, that's right, Luke. And you know what I like for this one is I like GBN and Lake Forest on Wednesday night. I
Oh,
can
wow.
see that game. GBN is has been struggling to score a little bit. I think that they're going to really pick that up and have a great offensive game. Lake Forest as well has been in some high scoring games themselves, at least on their end. So give me that to be the highest scoring game this week. And before we even get to your pick, we should mention that last week I did take that. We hinted at it earlier in the episode. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, looks like I have taken the lead 1.5 to 1. So, Luke, it's a long season, but it feels good to, be in first place for, I believe, the first time so far in the competition.
Yeah, up to this point. I'm going to go, and this is by no means me trying to pick on anybody. I just think, Carmel's been in some high scoring games this season. I like the amount of goals between Carmel and New Trier. I mean, look at Carmel when they played Lake Forest. They beat them 6-3. That's 9 goals. That's the least amount of goals they've had in any matchup this season, win or loss. So I really like their offense because they're still able to always find a couple. And if they're in high gear and they end up getting the win, the one game they've won is with 6 goals. So I think I'm going to target that game, Carmel New Trier, 5:30 p.m. Sunday, October 26th. So that will do it on the schedule for this week. We're going to have no question of the week or trivia this week. It is a entirely condensed episode here. No guest, but we'll obviously have a guest in the next episode. And if you guys have a recommendation, please go ahead and let us know down in the comments. That'll be our way of interaction. If there's a guest you really want to see, whether it's a coach, a player, a fan. I mean, if there's somebody who really wants to get out here, we love to have them. So, Dylan Ward is beside me. My name's Luke Jordan. We want to thank you so much for checking out episode number 7, and we will see you next week after a couple of SHL Network games of the week. Don't forget Friday 7:10 and Saturday 5:20. We'll see you then on the air.